If your children grew up in the Las Vegas area from the 1970s until about 2019, there's an excellent chance that they knew Mr. Robinson. He was the beloved third-grade teacher of Park Elementary for over 45 years. Every day in his classroom, there was something new to discover. He replaced Beatles lyrics with the multiplication table. With his Oregon Trail lessons, he brought history and drama to life at the same time. His science experiments were legendary. Let's just say that his students saved more eggs from crash landings than any other grade school. And somehow, he made diagramming a sentence fun. His students loved him. Most of the parents loved him too, unless, of course, there was a deadbeat dad or an abusive mother. Then he became the child's most diligent advocate. Mr. Robinson took his role as a mandatory reporter very seriously, serving as a witness in the family and criminal court system on no less than 5 occasions. His wife, a fellow teacher at the same school, was equally stalwart and equally beloved. Unfortunately, her life was cut tragically short in 1974. In 1996, Tom Robinson was named the Nevada State Teacher of the Year, an honor which he earned again in 2017. During both of the award ceremonies, he ended his speech the same way, looking up and blowing a kiss and mouthing the words, "I miss you." No doubt he was thinking of Elizabeth, his late wife. Much to the chagrin of many a single mother, Mr. Robinson never remarried. He never had kids of his own. But when he passed away, peacefully in his sleep, 3 days after teaching his final school year, over 1,000 former students attended his funeral. Just listening to clips of their eulogies, you can see how Mr. Robinson taught children lessons of resilience, integrity, and above all, compassion. Many people have called Thomas Robinson a hero, but today, I will be calling him a murderer. I believe I have enough evidence to prove that Mr. Robinson killed 3 people, and after we examine the facts, you might be glad he did. Welcome back to Strange Resort, the podcast that lurks in the shadows of otherwise sunny vacation destinations. I am your host, George Hatfield, and it has been a long time since last we spoke. I won't get into the details, but I will say that I was a little bit lost at sea, both figuratively and literally, and I am very glad to be back on dry land, far away from the ocean, and you cannot get much drier than the Mojave Desert, which is where I am as we speak. I am ecstatic about my most recent invitation. I will be spending the entire week at the Walking Box Ranch, about 7 miles outside of the little town known as Searchlight, Nevada. This property was once an old Hollywood getaway, built just as the talkies began to nudge silent films out of the way. And the namesake comes from old movie cameras that looked like clunky old boxes on spindly legs. And in the 1920s, one of the most prominent stars to strut in front of a walking box was a young woman named Clara Bow. I am not an expert in this era of cinema. I knew about Chaplin and Keaton and even Lillian Gish, but I didn't learn about Clara Bow until my friend from the Bureau of Land Management told me about this place. Ms. Bow starred in a movie I had never heard of before, but it was enormously popular at the time, one of Hollywood's first blockbusters. The film was called It, a provocative romantic comedy about a vivacious shopgirl and her wealthy employer. It turned Clara Bow into a star. However, stardom did not become Miss Bow. Hollywood took a severe toll on her mental health, so she and her husband tried to escape the pressures of fame by fleeing to the desert. Those close to her say that she found peace here. Sadly, this was not her permanent residence. Plagued by psychosis, she became a shut-in, and in 1965, she died of a heart attack at the age of 60. This ranch used to be a place of levity, of cowboy-themed parties with Hollywood's notorious flirts and flappers. Some locals in town believe that the ghost of Clara has returned to her ranch, and that if you listen to the wind, you can hear the maddening howl, and that is the sound of the silent film star that is not so silent film star that's... Let me rewrite this. Howl. What the hell is that? Sorry for that interruption. I normally edit out all of my mistakes, but I wanted to leave that one in so you could hear the screech of the tires and the subsequent thud and crash. For me, it has been about 4 or 5 hours since I was yammering on about Clara. So let me catch you up with what's been going on just outside the Walking Box Ranch. That sound that we heard was a crash caused by a sinkhole right in the middle of Route 71. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but it has put a damper on my podcast. Between the sounds of the sirens, the tow trucks, and now a construction crew, there has not really been a great opportunity to record in peace and quiet. If Clara Bow's ghost was hanging around at the beginning of this podcast, I'm sure the racket has scared her off by now. It sounds like the crew has, I think, paused for a lunch break, so I'm going to walk back to the roadside and check on their progress. The police are gone now. The vehicles involved in the accident, they're all cleared away. This is Route 71. It's kind of a relic in terms of infrastructure, as practically no one takes this road into Vegas anymore. So now there are only 3 road crew workers. They're focused on repairing the sinkhole, but instead of filling it in, it looks like they are digging deeper. I've asked the gentleman in the helmet how long it might be. One of the workmen points into the hole. He's pointing out something that is in this sinkhole that really should not be there. It's sort of a rusty metallic, it's a corroded metal. It actually seems to be the roof of a car. The nice man in the orange helmet has told me quite confidently that he can tell this is an old Cadillac from like the 1980s. What did you say it was? He says it's a sedan DeVille. This is starting to give me gangster movie vibes, and that's probably because we're so close to Las Vegas. All right, it's been another, hour and a half. No one has called the police yet. They're making more progress. We can see more of the vehicle. The friendly crew member he's gone down into now it's a pit, and he has just tossed up a license plate. Taking a photo, and I'm going to give these guys some more space again. I'm walking back on a little trail to the ranch. I'm morbidly curious as to what they are going to find inside that car. Based on their expressions, I think the crew members are hoping they're going to find a briefcase full of cash. Twilight is coming to the ranch, and if I can get the Wi-Fi hotspot to work, I'm going to use my laptop, and I'm going to do a little digging of my own. And what I find, at least for a podcaster like me, is better than gold. The license plate belonged to a man named James Dolan. He went missing in 1983. Apparently, the disappearance occurred during a freakish sandstorm that swept through all of Clark County. Dolan had been en route from his Vegas penthouse to his second home in the Hollywood Hills. Newspaper editorials speculated that his mafia connections thought he was becoming too flashy, drawing too much attention to himself. Other reports mentioned the possibility that Dolan was not dead, but had simply fled the country. But the motivation for both of these theories feels murky at best. From what I've read so far, Dolan wasn't that ostentatious. Other than dining out at some outrageously expensive restaurants, he didn't spend that much time in the public eye, and he stayed out of the press and out of legal trouble as much as possible. With one major exception. In 1974, he was charged with racketeering, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. The case was about to go to trial when the key witness was killed in a horrible explosion. Elizabeth Robinson was a first-grade teacher at Park Elementary. The newspapers don't say what she witnessed, but whatever it was, it had been enough to allow federal agents to file charges. She never got her day in court. Someone strapped 8 sticks of dynamite to the undercarriage of her 1968 Chevrolet, and she was gone. It was a devastating blow, not just to the district attorney's office and not just her grieving husband, but to the entire elementary school. But for Dolan, that car bomb was his get-out-of-jail-free card. He walked down the courthouse steps, unable or unwilling to disguise his expression as anything other than impish triumph. Almost 10 years followed, and Dolan's status grew through his underground empire. He was reputed to have dealings with the East Coast narcotic kingpin Enrico Balazar. He also had ties to the notorious Richie Ginelli, another wise guy who managed to shirk the law, but then mysteriously disappeared into thin air. All right, I've read enough disturbing research for now. I think it's time that the crew workers call the authorities. But by the time I walk out to the road, it looks like they've beaten me to it. The police are here. This is now officially a crime scene. Several highway patrolmen are securing the area, and I don't think it will be long before the detectives arrive with a forensics team. The crew workers have successfully pulled out the entire vehicle, and now they look dismayed. The front passenger side door has been opened. There's a sheet covering what I can only guess are human remains. The friendly crew member is willing to talk to me now, and I promise to keep his anonymity intact by altering his voice. What did you see?
The first time that told me things were going to get ugly was when we were pulling out the car, and I noticed these 4 bullet holes in the roof of the car.
Like a sniper.
The bullet holes were from the inside going out.
Oh. So the shots are fired from inside the vehicle.
That's right. So I shouldn't have been surprised when we opened up that door. There's a frickin' skeleton. Ugh. Not just one, but 3 of them. There's 2 in the front seat, one on the back, and the smell. I guess I should have known we weren't going to find anything good.
This is my future self interrupting. It's a few days later, and the poor guy that we were just listening to, he seemed pretty shaken, so I did not press him for more details. But eventually, I was able to get all the details I was looking for from the preliminary forensics report. The front of the Cadillac was indeed crushed from impact, and the skeletal remains of the driver indicate crushed ribs and a broken neck. He died on impact. The corpse in the passenger seat tells a different story. His legs were shattered, but the accident did not kill him. His death was caused by a bullet to the back of the head. The owner of the murder weapon and the corpse in the back seat was none other than James Dolan. Unlike the other 2 bodies, there were no signs of injury. He suffocated to death. Based on the scratch marks inside the interior of the Cadillac, Dolan was alive inside the vehicle as it was being buried. But how did the car get in there in the first place? The report mentions another vital clue that gave the detectives a scenario that seems both brilliant and ludicrous. Beneath the Cadillac and wedged into the grille and into the wheel wells, there were fragments of a canvas tarp, mostly gray, with a few yellow stripes. The same color scheme you'd expect to see on a desert highway. Someone tore up the concrete and dug a massive hole into the road and then stretched out a tarp to camouflage the trap. When I read this, a prime suspect immediately popped into my mind. But then I had another idea. This type of job would need to happen when the road was shut down for construction. And it would need a team of men involved, a whole construction crew who knew how to operate the equipment, who had access to such equipment. And thanks to the Nevada Transportation Department, I obtained a list of dates for when the road was closed. It turns out that in early July of 1983, Route 71 was repaved. Next, I needed a list of all of the men and women on the payroll working in construction during that time. At this point, my working theory was that this was a mafia hit. So my initial plan, and I'm not proud to admit this, my initial plan was to look for every last name on that list that sounded Italian. And as it turned out, there weren't that many Italian names, with the exception of Spicoli, but he turned out to be just some kid fresh out of high school. I did, however, find one name on the list that rang a bell. Tom Robinson. I very much doubted that this would be the same Thomas Robinson, as in the husband of Elizabeth Robinson. But the more I thought about it, as unlikely as he might be, the more I realized he definitely had the motivation. And that's when my online research shifted away from James Dolan to Thomas Robinson. With a quick Google search, I learned that he was a decorated teacher, that he had taught the third grade since the 1970s, and according to an extensive obituary, he passed away in 2019 as a cherished citizen of the community. Could this man in this photo commit such a complex assassination and then literally cover it up? Maybe. There's a famous phrase, revenge is a dish best served cold. Some people have said that this is an old Spanish proverb. Others believe it comes from the Klingon Empire. In my research, I've found the French phrase, revenge is best eaten cold, from a novel called The Orphan, or Memoirs of Matilda. It's a diabolical phrase at first glance, but there's also something very practical about it. Fire is messy, imprecise, but cold and calculating go hand in hand. All right, I've been holed up in the ranch for too long now, and for the record, I have not sensed any ghosts. But that might be because I was too distracted by this whole Cadillac thing. The road is repaired now. It's as though there was never a sinkhole and never a Cadillac-shaped coffin. I'm paying a visit to Park Elementary, where I've arranged a meeting with the principal.
Mr. Robinson raised the bar. I'll say that every teacher that came after him has looked to him as a role model.
As we continue our conversation, the principal lists off many of Mr. Robinson's accomplishments, all related to education, but I'm interested in his extracurricular activities. Do you know if he got a second job?
Well, he volunteered at all sorts of charities.
I mean, for pay. Did he maybe moonlight during the summer? Was he ever in construction?
Not that I'm aware of.
This would have been in the early 80s?
Oh, well, that is before my time.
Are there any teachers that knew him during that time?
What is this story you're working on exactly?
I'm not really sure yet, but thank you so much for talking with me. She gives me the name of a retired high school teacher, supposedly one of Mr. Robinson's best friends. I'm not including his name or the name of his nursing home here, but he did allow me to take this photograph.
Yes, I've known him a long time.
And his wife?
She was a sweet woman. I wish I could have gotten to know her longer. And I wish we all could have.
Thomas must have been devastated.
It broke him into pieces. Fortunately, he found some coping mechanisms.
Like what?
And then there was 1 or 2 years, he became a health nut, and we gave him a hard time because he joined a gym. That didn't last long.
It didn't?
No. That was about the same time that he worked with a jackhammer on a road crew.
He did.
He spent the whole summer repaving blacktop on the roads.
And there it is. During the rest of this interview, I try to maintain my composure, but I am freaking out on the inside.
Yep, I don't know that it was 1983. I don't keep track of the years anymore.
Do you know what he did on the road crew?
He just about broke his back, that's what. One summer the doctor said that he had a slipped disc, something, and he needed surgery. Thank goodness he'd moved on to another daydream. He was working on a novel. It didn't ever finish it, but I was going to sort of be a technical advisor. I don't remember much about the plot, except that there's a scene about trapping space aliens. You see, the aliens were zooming across on a transport vehicle, and the human is laid a trap.
So then the physics question that comes into play is, what will be the arc of the descent? What is the width of the mouth of this trap? How narrow does it get at the end? That was enough for me. I don't know if Mr. Robinson, the pride of Park Elementary, acted alone, but I am convinced he was directly responsible for the crash of the Cadillac and its subsequent burial. And it leaves me to wonder, if James Dolan survived the crash, and if Thomas Robinson was standing above the pit, did they say anything to each other? What happened inside the vehicle during those final moments? Did Dolan shoot his own bodyguard out of frustration or by accident? Or was it mercy? I don't know. And I also don't know if I should release this story to the world. How will generations of students feel once they hear the truth about Mr. Robinson? That he was more than just an amazing teacher. He was also a Machiavellian vigilante, straight from the pages of Edgar Allan Poe. But ultimately, I know I can't resist sharing this story. Not to tarnish a legacy, but to instill a little fear within the hearts of the cruel and the callous. James Dolan believed he was untouchable. He never expected karma to catch up with him, and certainly not in the form of a mild-mannered third-grade teacher. A man who lost everything, but somehow found the patience to wait. Well, I've had enough of skeletal remains and mob connections for a while. It is time I do something whimsical. I'm going to go on a long drive through this gorgeous desert landscape. I have heard about an old ghost town. Somewhere off the beaten path, it's a town called Desperation, and it sounds all folksy and old-timey westerny. Maybe it's the sort of place that Clara Bow might have appeared back in her It Girl days. And so, in search of a brighter tomorrow, it's time for me to mosey off into the sunset. So adios, yeehaw, and all that other cowboy stuff. Thank you for watching and listening to the Stephen King Book Club. If you are a fan of Dolan's Cadillac or any other of Stephen King's short stories, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section.